Okay, we're going to be studying lists in Prolog or in declarative programming, right? And lists are basically arrays, right? Lists are basically arrays. Okay, so let's just consider this situation. We have this predicate my list, right? And we have an array here. For example, the array is d comma e comma f. These are all the elements in the array, right? So this is our clause, right? So this is our clause. Okay, now I want to ask a query, right? Before I do that, let me explain something to you. In Prolog or in declarative programming, the first element of an array is always considered to be the head of the array. The first element is always considered to be the head of the array, and the remaining elements are considered to be the tail of the array. And remember that the tail of the array is always thought of as an array. Okay, so let me just show you a few examples, and that way you'll be able to understand better. Okay, if this is a clause in our knowledge base, right? If this is what we have in our knowledge base, right, and this is where I'm going to be asking queries. So if I ask this query, my list, and I say h/t, Prolog is going to take the first element and make this the head, right? This is the head, right? So h will be equal to d, and Prolog is going to take the remaining two elements and make that a part of our tail, which is this, right? So it's going to say t equals e comma f. Remember, the tail is always considered that it's an array. Okay, let's do another example. Okay, for this clause, if I write a query on this side saying my array x/y, then basically x is going to be the head, right? And x will be equal to what? Asad. And y will be equal to what? The remaining part, right? Which is going to be what? 1 comma 2 comma w. Okay, just remember this, that in Prolog, as far as the arrays are concerned, the elements can be of any data type. You don't need to worry about that. So you have a string value here, you have integer values here, and you have a character here. So in Prolog, you can have an array which can have all these kinds of data types. Okay, what if I have something like this? I have an array with a single element inside of it, and if I was now to ask this question, right? If I was to ask this query, which would say head tail, right? So the first element and the only element is a, right? So h will be equal to a in this case, and there's nothing left, right? But I told you that the tail is always an array, so t will be assigned the value. T will be basically equal to an empty array, okay, because there was no other element. So a was the head of the array, and this empty array or empty list is basically what t is equal to. Okay, let's say we have added a clause like this to our knowledge base, okay, and what we are saying is that in this clause, the predicate show head tail, show ht, will have information, will include an array, right? And this h will correspond to this h, and this t will correspond to this t. For example, if I was to ask the question, show head tail and I was to say something like y comma z comma 1 comma 2 comma 3, right? So y would correspond to the head, so y would be equal to 1 in this case, right? And z would be equal to this remainder elements, right? This would be another array. So I have and I could have written it the other way around also. I could have written my clause like this also, right? So this is one way of writing a clause, right? And it's doing the same thing. So this time, if I wanted to use this clause, I'd use the predicate find ht, and I would copy the same sequence, right? So first I'll mention my array, which would be what? For example, a comma b comma c, and then I'd mention the head and tail, right? So two variables here, like let's say y and z, right? So now y will equal the head, which is going to be a, and z will equal the remainder elements b comma c, right? So pretty simple. I hope you understand how a list gets processed. Okay, one thing you should know is that we define these clauses by ourselves, right? So these are user defined clauses. We decided that our clause show ht is going to have h, an unknown variable, t, an unknown variable, and an array. This h obviously is going to correspond to the head of the array, and this t will match this tail of the array, right? So I basically said what we basically said was that we have an array with two parts, head and tail, and the starting two variables are basically what? H and t, the same h and t, right? So this was the way we defined our clause, right? But there are some built-in clauses in Prolog. I should not say built-in classes, right? Clauses. I should rather say there are some built-in predicates. There are some built-in predicates in Prolog. For example, the built-in predicate append takes two arrays. So it's going to take one array, let's say 1 comma 2, and it's going to take another array 3 comma 4, and what this does is it adds these two arrays and gives a resultant array. It does not add them up, it appends them. It takes these two as the first element and these two as the second element and gives us this as the final array. So I can do something like this. I can use this built-in predicate and I can write a query which can say, so I'm going to write a query here, right? I'm going to say append find out x for me when this is the second array, right, and this is the final array 1 comma 3 comma 4. Okay, we know that this final array is a result of these two arrays, right? So this is the second array, which means what? This element is basically equal to x. So x is equal to the first array, which has a single element 1 inside of it. Okay, what about this one? Well, once again, this is the final array and it has been created from these two arrays, right? So this is the first array and this was the second array that was appended to the first array, and this was the result. So w in this case is going to be what? W in this case is going to be equal to this element 7. And what about this one? Well, we should know that q is a result of appending these two, right? Appending this one to this array, right? So this is the first array, this is the second one, and q should now be equal to what? 1 comma 5 comma 3 comma 6. Okay, and what about this one? See, in this one, the final array, we are saying, the array that is finally formed, just break it down into two parts, the head and the tail, and show us the answer as head and tail. So in this case, h is going to be equal to the first element, which is going to be 1, and tail is going to be the remaining of the elements, which are going to be 5 comma 3 comma 6. And what about this one? Well, this is the final result, right? 1 comma 5, and it has been created from these two, right? And we see that both of these elements are already there in the first array, right? Which means what? Which means x was an empty list, right? X had no elements inside of it. Okay, what about this one? In this case, we are asking a question from Prolog, and we are saying, if we use this as the first array and if we use this as the second array, then is this going to be the final result, right? So is this going to be the result of appending this array to this array? Okay, and the answer in this case is going to be true, right? Because when you append 1 comma 2 this array with this array, this is the array that gets appended, 3 comma 4, the result is going to be what? 1 comma 2 comma 3 comma 4. So this is going to return true as a result, right? Okay, how about this one? Append how about this one? In this case, Prolog is going to check that this array, is this the final result when we use these two arrays and append them, right? And the answer should actually be 1 comma 2 comma 3 comma 4, right? This should be the final array, but what we have here is this. So in this case, Prolog is going to return false. Next, we are going to take a look at another built-in predicate member that is used with lists. And this predicate is used to find out if a certain value belongs to the list or not, if it is there in the list or not, right? For example, in this clause, we are asking that is A a member of this array, and the answer that is going to be returned by Prolog is true, because yes, we can find that A is there inside of this array. In this case, we are asking Prolog, is Q a member of this array, and the answer that Prolog is going to return is going to be false. In this case, we are asking Prolog, see, what we are using here is an uppercase x, right? So this is a variable. So what we are asking Prolog is, tell me all the members in the array, right? So this is what we are basically saying, because we are using a variable here. We are using a variable. So when Prolog processes this list, it's going to assign this 1 to x, then Prolog is going to move forward. It's going to take a look at the second element and it's going to assign that value to x, and then it's going to move forward and it's going to take a look at the third element and it's going to assign that value to x, right? So this is going to be the output in this case, right?